From fighter jets over Tiananmen Square to financial tremors shaking the foundations of Africa, two very different events are sending equally urgent messages to the world. In Beijing, President Xi Jinping's military parade projected a vision of strength, innovation, and alignment with some of the world's most authoritarian regimes. But beneath the fireworks lies a clear message. China is no longer waiting for the West. It's moving forward on its own terms. Meanwhile, across the global south, African economies are nearing a dangerous tipping point. With debt payments soaring, international aid evaporating, and global tariffs tightening the noose, the continent may be on the brink of a financial meltdown, one that could send shockwaves across the entire planet. In this episode, we ask, what does China's rising military confidence mean for global peace and power? And how can the world avoid turning its back on Africa just when it matters the most? I'm Henny Safe. Let's get in focus. A report in Foreign Policy unpacks the real intent behind China's largest ever Victory Day parade. What was presented as a commemorative event for Japan's defeat in World War II was in fact a high-stakes geopolitical theater attended by the world's most controversial leaders, Putin, Kim Jong-un, Iran's new president, and even Serbia's Vučić. Fighter jets, robotic drones, and hypersonic missiles formed the backdrop to a speech by President Xi Jinping, warning that the world faces a stark choice: peace or war, dialogue or confrontation. The presence of North Korea and Russia at Xi's side, amid America's declining influence in global military balance, suggests a reconfiguration of alliances that the US can no longer afford to ignore. And joining us now from Beijing is Mr. Neder Ronghuan, a researcher and political analyst. Mr. Ronghuan, welcome to In Focus. So what was the core message President Xi Jinping was trying to send by hosting this massive Victory Day parade in the presence of Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un?
Thank you for having me. Firstly, is China want to shape correct view of World War II and the history, and telling the world that China was a country that made the greatest contribution and sacrifice in the World War II. And also China has made significant contributions to saving human civilization and defending world peace in the World War II. And China holds this military parade to remember the history and honor the hero that made participate in the World War II, and cherish peace. And it's demonstrates that China's firm and view to and a firm resolve to follow the path of peaceful development, and its strong will to defend national sovereignty and territorial integrity, and also its powerful capability to uphold global peace and stability.
Mm-hmm. Then should we interpret this display of advanced weapons such as the hypersonic missiles and the robot wolves as a deterrent or a direct challenge to the US-led world order?
No, China don't want to ship a challenge, any challenge to USA, but China want to have the great power to defend national sovereignty and its development interest. China also pursues a national defense policy that is defensive in nature, and the growth of China's uh, military uh, military power will provide more positive energy for promoting world peace and not for the conflict or for the war with the US.
Mhm. Well, everybody knows China's economic might, but foreign policy described this as the unveiling of a new Beijing shaped multipolar world. How far do you think along is China in building this multidimensional vision?
Through multilateral platforms such as the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRICS, China has activities promoted a just and orderly multipolar world and a new global governance system. China's vision of multipolarity has attract a lot of partners, particularly from the global South countries. So, for example, the we can see the SCO Tianjin summits before a few days ago. China has also proposed the global governance initiative. China has also made progress in building its advanced vision of a multipolar world. And but this, however, achieving a more equal and orderly multipolar world remain there is a long-term process. It also requires sustained global dialogue and cooperation to realize that.
Mhm. Well, from a Chinese perspective, does the inclusion of the controversial leaders like Putin and Kim strengthen or weaken the credibility of the Chinese message?
It's strengthened the message because the China want to remember the historic fact and the respect the fact of the history, and because Russian and Korean also made great contribution and sacrifice in the Second World War and against the fascists.
Mhm. Well, Trump's post about the parade, be it sarcastic or sincere, accused Xi of conspiring with America's enemies. Now, what's the view in Beijing of this sort of rhetoric?
Uh, because China has invite a lot of countries, but the Western country didn't respond for that. So it's China don't have time to make don't want to have any conflicts with any country because China wants to cooperate with all the countries to achieve win-win results, and don't China don't want to go back to the days of the Cold War.
Mhm. Analysts say that the military balance in Asia now has been permanently altered. Do you believe this parade confirms China's readiness for confrontation, or is it just strategic posturing?
I want to say that as China always emphasized that at all times, China remains committed to peaceful development and also to safeguard world peace, the China and world peace and stability, and China's growth of China's military forces. Uh, it means the growth of the forces to defense for peace. And also, China wants to work with all the other countries to build a community with a shared future for mankind.
Mhm. Well, everybody's been questioning or anticipating the reaction to this military theater, but in what ways do you think then the West, particularly NATO and the US, might respond diplomatically, militarily, or economically?
Well, that if they have the right view of the right concept of the China development, and say that China is not its enemy and is also made opportunities for them to achieve the common progress and development. Is China welcome that, but if they have the wrong or negative, the wrong view of the Chinese development, it will also take a lot of negative measures to uh, for towards China. But let us wait and see.
Well, do you think then Trump would think twice before imposing any or slapping any tariffs or sanctions on any of the European, or not the European, the Asian countries or countries that have aligned themselves with this axis?
For the China's attitude towards the Americans' policy in Asia, that is we should not choose the conflict, and we should choose the cooperation. Also, with to pragmatically to the cooperation with each other to achieve the common progress, and not for the not in order to uh, uh, to fight against each other.
Well, Vladimir Putin standing side by side next to Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping. Now, do you think that with this show of might among this alliance, do you think this will affect the proceedings of the conflict in Ukraine and Russia?
I think the China's attitude for the Ukraine crisis is very clear from the beginning, and is consistent, and that China calls all the parties to find a political solution and long-term solution, and through the negotiations, and stop fighting.
Well, yes, this is the formal stance and the formal position of China, but do you think now maybe other international partners or players within the Ukraine-Russia formula or conflict, do you think they will now take notice of this stronger alliance, the backing Russia now has with the major superpowers?
I want to say that China, not like the other the Western countries, China didn't take and will not provide any weapons to any parties in the conflict. And also, China is, as I said, China's attitude is very clear that all the parties should solve the problem not through the fighting, but through the negotiations.
Mr. Nedere Ronghuan, the political analyst and researcher from Beijing, thank you very much, sir, for your insights. Now, as the world watches China's expanding sphere of influence, the global chessboard seems increasingly crowded and rather unpredictable. Now, while China projects power and provocation on the world stage, the global south faces a very different kind of battle. Not one fought with weapons, but with budgets, debt, and disappearing hope. And nowhere is this crisis more visible than in Africa, where financial pressures are mounting at a scale not seen in decades. As the continent stands at a fiscal fault line, the global implications are impossible to ignore. In the Financial Times, former Central Bank of Kenya governor warns that Africa stands at the edge of a global financial cliff, with rising borrowing costs, shrinking aid, and America's protectionist tariffs strangling trade. Many of the continent's fastest growing economies are facing a silent collapse. The continent's infrastructure gap is widening, youth unemployment is soaring, and donor fatigue has drained public health and education programs. But what happens in Africa never stays in Africa. If left unaddressed, the ripple effects could destabilize global markets, migration patterns, and humanitarian systems. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. We still have more on this, so don't go away. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're now joined by Dr. Mahmoud Amber, the Assistant Professor of Economics and Head of the Economics Department at Al Aswan University. Doctor, welcome to In Focus. How deep is the financial strain across African economies right now? And what's driving this downward spiral?
Current times, the whole world.
Dr. Amber, how deep is the financial strain across African economies right now, and what's really driving this downward spiral?
Current time, the Africans suffer a great deal of uncertainty, and the whole world is. So this is a comparison between the financial crises that occurred in 1929, passing through the COVID pandemic, then the current times, in light of the geopolitical level. So this economic crisis is looming all over the world, and its impact will be most observed on the developed state, the underdeveloped states, because these economies have not yet gained strong footing after the COVID pandemic ended. They are still taking breath from the impacts, still bracing it. So all those who weren't part of this conflict, and all those who took part in the international commerce and trade and the flow of foreign investment, managed to get out of the bottleneck. Others didn't. So those who bared it mainly were the African nations, who didn't manage to land a strong GDP. Also, their exports were low, and they do not hold big ratios in the regional and international rates of contribution into commerce and global trade. So the majority of investors are looking for safe havens. This also was impactful on the African economies, who were exposed to external shocks, as I said.
Yes. Well, the Financial Times also points to the tariffs, the rising interest rates, and the cutting of aid. But the African Growth and Opportunity Act is about to expire. What does that mean for trade ties with the US and Africa's economic resilience?
point to the last bit of the question regarding the commercial exchange between Africa and the United States. In the meantime, the United States is imposing tariffs on many areas of the world, in addition to other procedures that do not have strong points of logic economically, and the dependence of African nations on the United States as one of its main partners of Africa have proven to not be a fruitful relation, because the commercial exchange throughout the world between Africa and the United States is now in great problem and threat. Also, we must take into consideration the reduce of the aid received by African nations is one also of the main reasons behind the setback. The delay or the status quo imposed by the current economic status of the world. Africa, the impact on Africa was greater than any other place. We must take also into consideration that the African continent had its development halted. They did not manage to enter into new trade groups, and since it was adopted by Ghana's president, it was looked upon as an ambitious project, like what occurred in the United States. So entering into economic, all these groups, though all these economic groups did not reach a state of perfection. This failure into reaching the destination was because Africa suffers from a security crisis, as you saw, like the emergence of Boko Haram in Nigeria. Also, the coercion of the infrastructure in Africa, the national problems like unlawful migrancy. The states in Africa did not manage to enter into successful economic blocks.
Yes, well, speaking of the infrastructure, now with infrastructure and job creation in Africa both lagging, how's this crisis affecting the continent's youth, especially in urban centers, and what can be done to secure the future of the youth then?
It has a fundamental impact because it reduces the jobs. Also, several reports mentioned that the African continent has 3.4 million jobs a year. Apart from Africa, on a worldwide scale, 10 to 12 million jobs are provided. So you can see the major difference. This is one of the main comparisons between Africa. That's why it is classed or categorized throughout the world that Africa holds the largest unemployed youth population. In light of the world's mass direction towards digital economy, Africa has
Yes.
a great pro point. They
Dr.
have
Dr. Mahmoud Ambar, thank you very much, sir. I'm sorry we'll have to cut you off because we are running out of time. Your call for a collaborative reset is timely and urgent. As Africa teeters on a knife's edge, the world must realize that poverty and instability do not respect borders. As China redefines strength on its own terms and Africa faces a crisis the world cannot afford to ignore, we're reminded that global power, military or economic, is never static. I'm Henny Saif. Thank you for watching.